Hey folks, I just wanted to videotape a short little discussion about writing your first poem. I'm anticipating that some of you may be a little bit nervous about writing your first poem, and so I wanted to go through these instructions of just sitting and trying to describe the things that you hear, and to talk a little bit about um, how the different poems, how they bloomed to a poem, but starting with either the things that I could feel, hear, touch, or see. Yeah. So if you followed the link and went to the Loneliest Whale poem, that's that poem. I wanted to just kind of read it and talk about what I was thinking about when I wrote this poem. Um, so I can't remember if I wrote this in the instructions, but I had a poetry group session the next day. So I sat down the night before that I was supposed to have a poem ready for my poetry group. And I sat down and I thought, I've got to come up with something. So I sat in the middle of my bed and I started with this exercise of just listening. And then and the dryer was going, and yeah, so it had this sheet in the dryer, and a pet had an accident, so I couldn't wait to do a whole load. I had to wash this sheet. I didn't want it to stink, so that's why I had a bed sheet in the dryer. But so I sat down to listen, and and I really had not noticed at all that the dryer was going until I sat down with my pen and paper and just got quiet. And there's just kind of something magical that happens when you do that. Um, Sounds that you are normally tuning out suddenly become evident. It suddenly becomes clear that of your body being in a space, and these sounds being in that space as well with you. And there's I have to say, there's something kind of sacred to me about being quiet and listening, and sometimes even looking at something. There's a sacredness in looking at. If you think about it, when we fall in love, we do that with our eyes, and when we feel loved, it's when someone is looking at us with love, and we feel like we've been seen, and that there is something about that. Even when you're looking at an object, there's a connection to it, and then the metaphors flow. Suddenly, where you might think that you're writing about something unimportant, by the way that you write about it, you'll end up writing about yourself, because we're all connected to everything. So I don't know how it exactly works, but I know that every time I get quiet and listen, a poem comes out of it. So the Loneliest Whale. So I've already told you how that the dryer cylindrical song is humming in the center of this quiet house, this safe wood box I call my own. I was thinking about how I'm in the center of this house, and I'm in the center of this bed. I didn't say that, but I was sitting, sort of cross-legged with my little notebook. And my bedside light is the only sign that one of us on the street is not deep in sleep. So I was already thinking about kind of the larger context of the house, and how the house is sitting in a space, which really kind of makes you, as far as your perspective goes, it kind of made my perspective go up higher. On the street, not who is not deep in sleep, cocooned by after midnight moon. So I've made a setting of it's late at night, the after midnight moon. There's a single bed sheet in the dryer, flapping in electric heat, and so the not the metaphor, but the simile here, the humming like the loneliest whale in the Pacific. I did have to go and research that. I had heard about the loneliest whale before, and I remembered that it hummed and that it was a certain frequency, but I couldn't remember what. I didn't remember. I didn't know the name of the species or any of the species really. So um, I wrote. So some of this comes a little later. About not the same 52 hertz frequency. I worry over his unanswered mating call. Now that I wrote that night, and and really I don't know if it was the simile or the kind of going up in perspective that made me go up over to the Pacific Ocean, and I felt like I flew there. I kind of felt like, my perspective flew there. Um, uh, so worrying about its mating call. And then these details here are also from having looked up information about the whale, how scientists are not certain of his species because he hasn't been heard. And then when I thought about people hearing, so I just conjured up a scene. By the late night fishermen, their rocking boat slap. Then I'm thinking, like, how would they, how would that sound come to them? Which is, and I visualize the sound kind of going through the ocean and hitting the bottom of the boat and going up, and so that's where these lines come from. Their rocking boat slapped by waves, the moon above skipping the water with blue light, how the high-pitched moan crosses water and air and shivers up through the deck, up one fisherman's spine, into the chamber of his chest. At this point, I'm surprised with what I'm writing, and but I was just following it. I was following the sound, essentially. Um, how his own heart breaks, how the umbrella, and by the way, with a lonely whale, me sitting in the middle of the house, and a heartbreak, and this moaning, this lonely whale moaning. I had already established a tone, and so I knew it was the tone of this poem had to be kind of lonely or heartbreaking or something. But how the umbrella of star sky above the earth. So I was thinking again about I needed to come back home to finish the poem. Um, how the umbrella of star sky above the earth hums a similar song in the center of all this space. That was also something I'd heard before, that the universe has a hum to it. How those of us in beds, now I just needed to close, and a lot of times the way to close a poem is to go back to your opening. Now I'm not really going, well, I'm going back to me as far as the opening. And remember, I'm the one awake, so it just seemed natural for me to go to sleep for the ending. So how those of us in beds below windows turn toward its sound, pull sheets tight, turn off the inside lights, and rock ourselves to sleep. Yeah. So the other thing is that this poem has a kind of a shape to it. Its lines are kind of about the same length. They are enjambed at the end. That means that it's a run-on sentence that I just return at a certain space, and I try to return on. I try to end the line on interesting words like street, moon, electric, Pacific, high, boats, air, spine, brakes, sheets, sleep. So a lot of those words have a little bit of what I call click power. It kind of makes you kind of spit a little bit when you say those words. And they're kind of attention grabbing words. And they're also words that conjure an image. All right. So yeah. So that was Loneliest Whale, and the Watched Pot. Let's see. So this one, I can't remember if I gave you that. What did I say about that watch spot? Um, yeah. So I didn't tell you that much about it. Okay. So I was again, I was trying to come up with a poem for my writing group. Um, and I went to make myself a cup of tea, and I was getting ready to write a poem, and it was a nice time of the evening. It was that, you know, time when it was kind of late, but it was still light. I think it was summer, and I was standing in the kitchen, and I just decided to like watch watch the water. And I was just going to watch the water. And by watching the water, again, all your senses kind of come alive when I guess it's the closest I can think of. It's akin to meditation or prayer, where you just decide to be in the moment. So the watch pot begins with a purpose to watch a pot, um, but I start to notice everything around me, and then I was struggling trying to come up with late evening is a veil. I did feel like there was something around me, that there was something around the whole house, and in a way it was kind of like I don't know. I always feel like time kind of stands still when I'm in that zone listening for a poem. There feels a little bit like something magic's about to happen. So I felt kind of protected and like my house was a sacred space. So I was trying to capture that in words. Late evening is a veil, a canopy sheltering this soft lit kitchen in Georgia. And you're always trying to find little places where you can plug in cultural facts or like place. Hold on. Like also because if you mention things with names in it, it also adds a little bit of interesting language. So then a name of something is always a word that is interesting in your poem. So Georgia, where I stand. So again, I am also describing, my perspective and where I am in the home, and I'm thinking about everything around me. I stand beside the quiet hum of the icebox, and I chose icebox because I like the word better than refrigerator. Of course, and it kind of makes it sound a little antique or antiquated, maybe, but I like it. In front of me, the electric eye under the pot is at work, already I'm kind of I'm giving something non-human a little bit of character. The pot is at work while the world is folding towards sleep. When I determined to prove wrong an old saying by witnessing the birth of the first rolling boil, the room wakes. Now that I'm also trying to describe this act of magic that's going on around me. Beyond the open window, and the window was open in the kitchen, I notice for the first time as I'm looking at the pot that I can hear this, those waves of crickets. So that's the wave of cricket song, loud then soft then loud again, applauding things unseen. I didn't know that I was going to be able to repeat that, but that was fun to figure that out at the end, to have the applauding come back. The black cat leaps up, puts two paws on the sill, stretching his haunches towards night's song. That did happen. My cat jumped up on the window. And then he did that thing. His head rotates left and right as 100 tiny bubbles squat on the bottom of the stainless steel pot. So again, my verbs that I'm choosing for the things happening in this pot are kind of personification, where Um, the bubbles are squatting. It looks like a rain-wetted window below 2 cups of nervous water. Patsy Cline is crooning from another room about things that fall to pieces. But this moment feels more like a coming together, like a poem scratching on the window screen. When the cat's ear twitches my way, just after the first royal occurs, and it takes me a second to glance down to see the whole pot clapping. Yeah, so that was a fun one to write. It was a fun one to kind of to capture. It's almost like I'm taking a photo or something, or I'm taking a video of a certain moment in time. And so I think that's a real easy poem to write, and I think it can sometimes be very surprising to come up with things that that surprise you, that you didn't that you know uh, that you didn't expect from your own surroundings. I feel like it's a good feeling to do that. All right. And then the last one, the filling. So that one, I think I explained to you in the instructions. I just decided I needed to write a poem, and I just outside my window, these men were working. So it was just what I began to see, and I decided, because it's always the cutting down of trees are kind of I get a little bit upset around them. I know I'm not supposed to, and that's stupid, and but when you're alone, you can just write how it comes, and I felt like kind of exaggerating a little bit. So that's there is a little bit of tone that's in this piece that kind of feels a little bit like um, it's not that it's that I'm exaggerating. It's not that I'm joking, but I personify this tree more than what the men are doing. So it's called The Felling. I'm sitting in the middle of a poem, a murder. You might call it a pruning. Now, at this point, I am just looking outside my window, and I decide, okay, this is it. A poem is happening right in front of me. I got to start taking notes. And that's why I started with, I'm sitting in the middle of a poem. The weaker limbs go first, cracking and complaining. Then the bucket lifts the man to an emerald crown, a pine needle hat that goes quickly in one stroke of 2 tan arms. And I liked kind of making the men subhuman and the tree more human. I don't know if you noticed that I'm doing that in this poem, but I have them. They're just an arm working and cutting off pieces. 2 tan arms in an orange shirt. The neighbor tree acts as the accomplice, again giving the trees more personification than the actual men. Supporting the rope that catches each sliced section. After the heave, the knocking loose, the mighty wood swings for a hazardous moment, while a mob of hard hats below, and again, the men become hats. They're shirts, and now they're hats. A mob of hard hats below, and yard witnesses. So I'm including myself in there, like, and there were some other neighbors far away that I could see that were outside watching the murder. Or kitchen window voyeurs. That was more me. Prepared to catch the log like they might a jumper. Again, with the tree and being human and tragic. But the hung log swings dumbly when it falls. Its only protest, some banging against the turncoat tree it has stood beside for 50 years. I'm kind of demanding that we consider the tree here by saying it's a 50-year-old tree. Um, it's a loser's last slap. I'm trying to, when I write that, I'm just trying to extend the description. I'm sure I came up with a few other things and then deleted them as well. I can see the remaining tree firming its roots. That was again with the turncoat tree is glad to be surviving this incident. Um, Turning its lucky needles toward the morning light. It's always a good idea to bring in the light in your poems. The light is somewhere. It's overhead, it's morning, it's night, it's evening. Um, it helps to situate the reader inside of something, inside of time. Light helps us know um, not where we are, but when we are. um, when the base is sawed, 15 feet of wood is pulled toward the rope tied to a pickup, it falls with a thud that we all feel, a bruising of earth, our street knocked off kilter, our bodies reluctant to breathe. I want to make sure that, that there's um, repercussions for this act. The vibration still moving up through our feet. I have a lot of things about vibrations moving up. I noticed with the comparison with the Loneliest Whale. When orange shirts load debris and tuck themselves safely in cabs and pull away, leaving all these witnesses to stare up at a gulf of blue air where once was all needle green. So we end with a description of the absence of something, right? So yeah, and I'm not even sure I've ever sent that out anywhere to be published, but it has not been published. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to kind of go over each of those poems and talk a little bit about what I was doing, and I want you to think about how even whenever we read from Kirby's poems in the book, how you might turn something that you're reading into an assignment. And so I think all of these poems are sort of they're the same assignment to me. They're sit in the middle of your house and listen, or become awake to your surroundings, and you could do that anywhere, not just in your house, of course. Anyway, I hope that helps, and I hope you're having fun writing your first poem. All right, so I can't wait to see what you come up with, and yeah, I'll say goodnight. Thanks.